In this devotional, I'm going to share with you three thoughts from Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 16 and 17, where I'll ask the question, should I seek wisdom? Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 16 and 17 says, "When I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out." Solomon really has a strange sort of perspective on wisdom. He says in the beginning of Ecclesiastes that he sought wisdom, sought to know all that he could know, and what he discovered is that such a search is vanity. And yet he still devotes himself to trying to figure out whether or not gathering wisdom is even a worthwhile endeavor for a person. As he does this and he tries to seek out pleasure in different ways and find satisfaction here and there, he continually comes back to the idea that man's plight on earth is best understood to be work. That a man ought to work and find joy in his work, find joy in his food, find joy in his drink, and outside of that, everything else seems to be mysterious. Well, if all that's the case, where does that leave us when we are seeking out wisdom? Well, here are three thoughts to try and answer that question from Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 16 and 17. Thought number one, ask yourself why. Ask yourself the question, why do I want to become more wise? Why do I want to gather wisdom? Is it because I want to make a name for myself? Is it because I want to be significant? Is it because I want to have intellectual power greater than the people around me? Or is it because I truly love wisdom? And if you can answer this question and you can figure out the reasoning behind why you want to seek out wisdom, then you can discover whether or not it's a good idea for you. You have to remember that Solomon continually says that the quest for wisdom, the quest for pleasure, the quest for any sort of earthly benefit is ultimately vanity. And that work itself is one of the few pleasures that is pure. So ask yourself the question, why do I want to gain wisdom? Thought number two, God's ways are higher. And this is one of the things that Solomon seems to wrestle with more than anything else. He is constantly going back to the question, why does the good person suffer and the wicked person prosper? Why is it that it seems like the wicked people might gain all the benefits of the righteous, while the righteousness gain all the punishment or discipline of the wicked? Well, the answer he comes to is that God's ways are higher than man's, and that man is never able to fully know the mind of God. So as you begin or participate in your own quest to discover wisdom, you have to recognize that God's ways are always higher than man's ways, and man is simply attempting to get a glimpse of God's wisdom, and recognize that they will never be able to understand the full scope of it. Thought number three, there are limitations. There are limitations to how much wisdom you can gather. If Solomon, given a spiritual gift of wisdom, being blessed by God with wisdom beyond any other who existed during his time, if he recognizes that there are limits to what wisdom can offer, then we too should recognize that. We should realize that this is something that is real and intrinsic in the way that we are created, that there are limitations to the things that we can know. People might say that they have figured out everything that there is to know in the world, but that simply is not true. The mind of man is not capable of fully comprehending all of God's creation, let alone the mind of God himself. And as such, if you are seeking out wisdom, if you are trying to become as wise a person as possible, you need to recognize that there are limitations that every person must acknowledge. We are finite in our being and created that way. To deny it is folly. These three thoughts come to you from the assigned reading of Ecclesiastes chapters 7 and 8. If you'd like to read through the Bible with me, you can do so by joining the Facebook group Through the Bible, where we are reading the text of Scripture together.